So Ronald and Richard Palazzolo were brothers. They were identical twins. And 20 years ago today, they were both in the city. I heard about their story not too long ago. I found out that three of us went to the same high school, the Holy Cross in Queens. They were a couple of years ahead of me, but we were there, I think for a year. They were probably seniors. I was a freshman. I didn't know them. But I heard about their story on this kind of podcast interview that he had done very recently. One of the brothers. It was one brother talking about the other. And this is what he said. My mother didn't know she was having twins. So my brother was born at 8 o'clock, and the doctor left to go out and tell my dad that he had a son. 12 minutes later, the nurse delivered me. And she went out and told my father that he had two sons. I think that's when he lost the rest of his hair. I have a picture of me and my brother. We were like 6 months old, and we were holding hands in the crib. My mother used to tell us all the time that we'd talk to each other. Nobody knew what we were saying, but I guess we did. Some kind of language. We just did everything together, from getting up in the morning to coming home at night, whatever it was. We were roommates in the city after college. We were both stockbrokers. We were so close. It was just like being one person. We both worked in the North Tower. On that day, the plane hit, and I tried to get my brother on the phone. Finally, somebody picked up. I could hear him in the background saying, "Just tell him to get out of the building." I often try to imagine what those people went through. I guarantee he went out like a hero, putting people before him. That's just who he was. But we know how it all ended. When my dad passed away a few years before 9/11, my mom gave me and my brother his dog tags from World War II. And we both wore them religiously every day. We loved wearing them. But that day, 9/11, when I finally got back to the apartment, his dog tags were hanging on the doorknob of his room. I looked up and said, "Why weren't you wearing your dog tags?" But then I realized that I needed to have them. God gave them to me, and I have them on right now. It doesn't feel like 20 years to me. It all feels like yesterday. The first thing I think of when I get up and the last when I go to sleep is my brother. That's how I feel. The pain doesn't go away. I was in the car when I was listening to that, and I swear I almost had to pull over. His voice was cracking throughout with these long pauses. It was almost like I just had to turn off. It wasn't my pain. Like I couldn't even, I had a tough time just listening to this stranger's pain. It just talked about being an identical twin and how it's just different. You know, siblings can be close, parents and their kids can be close, but there's something unique. You know, he even almost described it as like kind of crazy, but it is just the reality about, in some way, they are almost one. And you could hear it. It was like a part of him died 20 years ago. He talked about having the two of them were friends with this other group of other pair of identical twins. I think they lived in the neighborhood, and they were very tight. They were part of this, unique club. And he said that night they called him because they knew his brother was missing, and he went to their apartment. And he just said they didn't even say anything. There was nothing to be said, but he knew that they knew what he was feeling. And eventually he stayed over. He said he slept on the couch in the living room. And he said at one point, one of these friends, these twins, came out of his room after they kind of went to bed. And he came out and he said he laid down on the floor next to the couch. And he said, this is the brother who lost his brother. He's laying on the couch, and he said his foot was, I guess he was too big for the couch, and his foot was kind of hanging over the arm. And he said this guy just sat down on, like I said, on the floor and just kind of leaned his leg against his leg. And he never said anything. I mean, isn't it kind of a temptation to just like turn away when you feel pain? Like if you can run from it, isn't our instinct to do just that? Even when you hear the expression of another person's pain, I'm telling you, I was going to turn this off. I was like, oh, this is just too much. This is just too sad. I think you get a version of that in this gospel tonight from Peter. Jesus is telling Peter, he's telling all the apostles, he's telling us, like, pain's going to be part of the picture. Like, if you're going to take your life seriously, if you're going to be an authentic, committed, principled person, if you're at least going to try, like, get ready for struggle. Like, it's going to be part of the mix. Peter says no. Jesus says yes. Don't run from pain. Don't deny pain. Don't substitute unhealthy distractions from pain. It's interesting, this gospel, like that was the second part of it. The first part of it was kind of the opposite. It was like probably Peter's finest moment. Jesus is for the first time is asking, like, so what are people saying? What's the word out there about me? And you just heard it. Yeah, people think you hear him, they think you're that, you think you're a prophet, they think you're John the Baptist. But they all know he's not. And then he goes, well, then you tell me. So who do you guys, you're following me, you've kind of left everything. Man, you ought to know who I am, so tell me who you think I am. And Peter nails it. He says, you're the one, you're the Christ, you're the Messiah. You're the reason to give up everything. You're the only one to follow. Peter's the only one who gets it right. And then, I don't know, seconds later, Jesus starts doing this pain thing, this suffering thing, and Peter's like, no way, never. Jesus tells him to get away from him. It's this contradiction, isn't it? Joy and sadness, sorrow and hope. I mean, I think of those two brothers who died. Well, that one brother who died. The difference between living and dying was a couple of floors. One worked on one floor and the other worked on another. One lived and the other didn't. Like, you hear stories, don't you, about people who, the other day I was reading about, today, 20 years ago, and this guy said that he took the day off because it was his kid's, first day of kindergarten, I think. And he didn't go to work. And then you hear stories about people who didn't even work there, but for some reason happened to be there that day. Heard about a person who missed their flight the flight that went down in Pennsylvania. They missed the flight. They were talking about how livid they were because they missed it initially. Doesn't it kind of make you sometimes wonder about, like, man, where is God? Is it all random? Where is God in this picture? This comes down to I work on one floor, I live, you work, your office is on another, and you don't? I don't know. Some days I'm not, I don't know. You wonder kind of God's role, how closely connected is he to us? There's moments when it just seems so definite that he is. Those great moments in life, those Peter's, the good moment in the gospel today when Peter just said it right. But then in a matter of seconds, it can just go south. And our lives can be like changed forever. And maybe it's just this. Maybe it's like making peace with having to live with that paradox, that kind of contradiction. I talked to somebody the other day, somebody from the parish, and she just mentioned in passing, not in passing, she told me that I think if I got it right, that yesterday was the birthday of her son, who died when he was 6 months old, in their arms. He died in his father's arms. She's at Mass all the time. They're at Mass all the time. They're such people of faith. And I don't know them that well, but they were like, they seem so joyful. They had a bunch of kids after. But like this, piercing, I can't even imagine what that must be like. But it didn't crush them. I mean, I suspect the pain is still crushing, but it didn't crush them. Maybe just the power of faith. It's like when we're close to him, we survive. I was watching a documentary again about all of this, and it was an interesting one. It was about, it must have been ESPN. It was about like these sporting events that were kind of in the shadow of 9/11, and they had when President Bush threw out the first pitch. That was the World Series, right? Was that the World Series when he threw that out? Amazing, incredible night. Security was nice. He was wearing we didn't know, but he had a bulletproof vest under the fire department jacket he was wearing. And then when Mike Piazza hit the home run that night, I guess it was maybe the first night back at Shea. Like these moments when like sports just sort of grabbed us. We just desperate to celebrate. I remember Super Bowl 36. It was that following February. The Patriots beat the Rams. It was actually the Patriots' first Super Bowl, Tom Brady's first. They beat them 20-17. They say it was a pretty good game. To be honest with you, I don't even really remember too much of the game. It was pushed back a week. It was February instead of the end of January because 9/11 threw everything. They delayed the season. It was in the Superdome in New Orleans. And like I said, I don't really remember much about the game, but I remember the halftime show. Maybe you do too. And if you don't, you got to check this out tonight. U2 performed. Most people say, or many say, it's the best halftime performance ever. They played 3 songs. You got to watch this video. Bono comes out, and he comes walking through the crowd, kind of like he looks like a prize fighter getting ready to begin a fight. Very Bono. They sing of the opening song they play is one. It's a great one. It's called "Beautiful Day." The next one they do is very brief. It's about 1.5 minutes long. It's called MLK. It's almost like a hymn, and it's a complete reference to Martin Luther King. But it was really more of an intro to the final song, Where the Streets Have No Name. That's an awesome song. It's from a great album. It has this great intro to it, very kind of like iconic U2 sound. So you now know the song just by the intro, the guitar intro. You know what's coming. And if you listen very intently, you can hear Bono speaking. But he's not speaking into the crowd because you just about can hear it. And this is what he says. Lord, open my lips, that my mouth may sing forth your praise. Lord, open your lips, that my mouth may sing forth your praise. And he begins to sing. And then there's this, and maybe you'll now remember this, there's this massive banner emerges from behind the stage. And it starts, you're like, what the heck? You don't even know what it is at first. There's this, 30-foot wide banner. And it starts to raise from the floor of the stage, and it just starts going up. And it rises to the ceiling. It's like hundreds of feet high in this dome. And it has the names of all who died on 9/11. It just keeps growing, keeps getting longer and longer. It's like almost 3,000 names. He wrote that song, Where the Streets Have No Name. Bono, he was writing about what life was like, and he's from Dublin, but he was writing about what life was like in Belfast during the Troubles, and even after. And then the point of the name is, he said, you could tell the religion of a person, and you could tell how much money they had by the name of the street they lived on. It was just all about where people were and where they were allowed to go and where they weren't allowed to go. So the song kind of imagines this place where there's really no division, and there's no violence, and there's no hatred, vengeance. He said when he wrote it, he was really just writing about, man, how great it would be if there were no names in the streets and all this craziness wouldn't be. But then he said it kind of became a metaphor over the years for hope and for heaven. And that's why they played it that night. He said, we sing that song when we need God to be in the house. At the end of it, they really choreographed it well. Just as the song ends, this crazy banner drops, comes crashing down to the ground. People are going crazy. He's wearing a jacket, like a leather jacket, Bono is. And he stands there and he unzips the jacket and he opens it up like this. And inside the jacket is an American flag. And the place goes even more crazy. Like they said, to be there in person, like it was not to be believed, the emotion. And he just communicates this, the look on his face. This non-American was holding up this flag, like this moment of triumph and kind of defiance. But in the triumph, there's also just great tragedy. Like you watch this, you listen to this song, and like you feel a little schizophrenic. It's like the difference between one floor in a building and the other. It's like life and death. These names, and then kind of this moment, like with this flag, like we won't be beat. We won't be stopped. Pain is real. Pain is a part of life. But it doesn't do us in. So maybe tonight, in addition to the obvious, praying for, remembering all who died and all who grieve, think for a moment about ourselves. What's your sorrow? What's your, at this moment in your life, like right now, like what's your cross? What's he look like? How does she sound? What's your loss? What's your burden? Or what's your worry? This is the place to be. This is where sadness is healed. And it doesn't go away, but it is healed, isn't it? He said they play that song when they need God to walk into the room. This is where God walks into the room.